Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to have a look at two games that I played at the recent 4NCL weekend. So I was playing for the team Sussex Smartlets, and it was the final weekend of the 4NCL. And the team needed to do relatively well to make sure they avoided relegation. In the end, the team won all three games, so avoided relegation quite comfortably. Um, so I had two pretty interesting games. As you can see here, I'm down just over 2,000 elo rating at the moment, which is much lower than where I'd like to be. I'd like to sort of get it up to 2,100 at least. But obviously I had a bad weekend at the previous 4NCL. Um, Lost like 15 points or so. So I'm sort of trying to get those back. And in the first game, I was playing against this Scottish Fide Master called Ian Gawley. Um, so this was against the team Alba, who are, I think, the main Scottish team in the 4NCL. And I'm playing on board, where was I? Board two, I think. No, board three. I think I was board three. So yeah, Ian was their board three. They had a sort of talented junior called Rishiv BJ Kumar on board one, and I think another youngish guy Hamish Olsen is their board two. So yeah, I'm playing white in this game, and I open with e4. Ian plays the French defense, which I wasn't expecting. Like in all his games, he'd been playing this stuff. Um, he played the French, and when we analysed it after, he said, he'd only played it a handful of times in his life, so like I couldn't really have expected it. And I think in something like the 4NCL, preparation is super important because you get the pairings an hour and a half in advance. Like everyone's there with their laptops, kind of, you know, going at it an hour before the game, like figuring out what they're going to play. So it can be quite a good strategy to play something that you've never really played before, because then you're not going to walk into some prep. I mean, obviously the downside of it is you've got to be like fairly confident in it. But anyway, so we get e4, e6. I play d4. He plays d5, and I play knight d2. So this is the Tarash variation. I had an interesting line prepared against knight f6. I won't give too much away, actually, just for in case any future opponents watching this, but I had some interesting ideas. So we get c5, which has become like the modern main line. Yeah, it's now much more popular than knight f6. And you can see that it's just got a better score for black. So like it does tend towards a draw 51%, which shows that the move is very, very solid. And it's probably one of the main downsides of the Tarash. Like I think a lot of people play knight c3, because probably technically a better move, but obviously then you have to deal with these sorts of winner wire ideas. So the knight d2 avoids the winner wire, but it allows this c5 move. Like here, c5's probably not a thing, because you can do like this and you probably be a pawn up. So yeah, just a bit of deviation on the theory, but we get c5. I play these, which is the main moves. Queen d6, I understand, is the main line, but like this is possible, this is possible. I think they're only sort of subtly different. Against queen d6, I did know there's a possibility of this. However, I didn't quite know it well enough to play it in the game. It's quite an interesting pawn sack idea. I suppose you're saying that you've got three pieces developed. Maybe you can get another tempo on the queen, but you are obviously a pawn down. So to briefly explore this line, would go something like this. Like it's kind of hard to say why you have a lot of comp here, so I think it's quite a difficult line to play for white. I mean, in any case, I went for the much simpler approach of playing knight b3. So you're basically going to say that you're going to win back this pawn. E5's not possible because simply takes, and rook e1. If knight e4, yeah, it just takes here, and like you're gonna get this knight eventually. So for that reason, we got knight b takes d4, knight takes d4, and I could take with a knight or I could take with a queen. Taking with a knight is much more popular and probably correct. I mean, computer actually says that they're equal, but given these scores, white scores a whole lot better with taking with the knight. So if we just briefly look at like how some of these games go. So Karyakin and Caruana, for example. Um, wow. So yeah, so like some like interesting theory is a6, rook e1, queen c7, bishop b3, g3. Yeah, so you get to these quite sharp kind of positions. We insert this game. In fact, we'll do insert. So anyway, yeah, wow. So there's actually a lot of pretty cool theory from these positions. But anyway, I played the much more boring queen takes. Which, to be honest, just leads to like an equal ending. But my thinking was like I'm against a higher rated player, and a draw is not the worst result in the world. He plays bishop c5. I play knight b3, attacking the bishop. His bishop retreats. I play bishop b5 check, which already a blunder. So I shouldn't seek to trade bishops at this point. I should play, for example, bishop f4. After bishop d7, a4, rook here. Yeah, you just get some kind of position and it's just completely equal. Okay, so I probably do need to look into this. If I'm going to play this seriously, I probably need to look into the sharp lines where you recapture with a knight. But anyway, so we get in the game knight b3, bishop b6. We get these exchanges. And he is a bit better here, although he should play rook d8, interestingly. Apparently rook c4 throws away the advantage. So why is this much better? I suppose I'm in a bit of a zugzwang, and that this is natural, but it allows this move. Oh, I see. That's interesting. So rook d8 is quite a high-level move, kind of zigzagging me. I might have played this. Oh my god, then this is possible. Ah. So that's really quite clever. But rook d2, the engine's now coming up with, saying that takes here, and I get to a better square. So it's not all that clear. I suppose it's imagining these pawns are going to start rolling and black's got a kind of more active side of it. So rook c4 threw away his advantage, apparently. I play bishop here, which is apparently correct. Rook e4. I just swap and play rook e1. So it's a pretty dry game by all accounts so far, but I promise it does kind of liven up a bit later on. So he plays f5, obviously defending the rook. I play king f1. So obviously in the end game, my king's going to want to, be involved at this side of the board. King e7, f3, takes, rook c8, king e2, and e5. Now, apparently e5 is a bit rushed. Computer just wants to do it slowly, like and it reckons black is a bit better because this bishop's kind of dominating this knight. This king's like stuck in defense of this pawn. And at some point, black might be able to organize this kind of stuff. White's just very passive. I don't know if it thinks black's winning or it's sort of draw with best play. I think it's one of those ones where black's a fair bit better, but it's quite hard to find the actual sort of winning plan. So instead, when he played e5, it gives me a bit of counterplay, which I think why this move is wrong, because I'm allowed to get rook d5 and rook b5. And what this means is if ever this bishop moves, I'm attacking the b7 pawn, and it's not actually that easy for him to kick this rook out, because if he plays a6, I can often just take here. If he were to bring a king over, this would be hanging. And I do have this idea of a4, a5, so I sort of get this counterplay. Plays rook c7, meaning that he can move the bishop and defend this pawn. I played this move g3, which again is apparently the engine best move, so I'm playing quite accurately at this point. And my idea with behind g3 was to prevent f4, because if, for example, f4 takes knight d4 check, I thought this ending was okay for me, and it turns out I'm right. So, because say I played a random move, like, I don't know, here, I was thinking maybe he goes here and brings the bishop in, which is sort of the situation I wanted to avoid. So I play g3, he plays f6, just a kind of like useful move, bolstering the center, perhaps hinting at this coming over. I play a4, so hinting at a5 at some point. And we get bishop g1, king here. So it's just based on a trick that he can't really take this, because I would play king here and obviously win the game. So he goes back, I bring the king back up, he goes back, and we sort of do this, hinting at the repetition dance. But I mean, I was sort of happy with the repetition, to be honest, because, he's, what is he, 275 points higher than me, so it's going to sort of give me some Fide to draw with him. So in fact, how much, it doesn't say because it's copied to my study, but I probably gained like 8 points from this game. So f4 he played to defend the bishop. And here was an interesting moment, because if I do take, which I did play in the game, I'm sort of committed to a sort of interesting position where like this pawn's probably going to drop, and it's going to be difficult for me to maintain with like this coming over. Apparently that's a bad move for some reason, but like I wasn't sure about this, I suppose. Whereas something like this just keeps the balance. So I have to say h5, check, and here I, well, I'm doing, well, still equal. I mean, that's the problem. Computer says everything's equal. But anyway, I had to kind of accept a bit of. So I played. So apparently, I should just keep the pawn with like h3 or h4, which I don't know why I rejected. I mean, h3 is very natural, I suppose. Yeah, so I went for this, which is apparently a blunder. So we get king f5, knight takes b7. It's probably a blunder because he had rook d7 here. Like, so in the game, he took the h2 pawn, which apparently now it's equal again. So he needed to play rook here as an intermezzo, which is quite nice with the rook coming here. I mean, it's by no means lost, but like something like this is going to be difficult for me to defend. But luckily he missed that and took the pawn. I give this check with a knight. I bring the knight back where it can come to say c5 or g5. So like against f5, for example, it could go. I don't know if g5's good. We get f5. Yeah, we go back to c5. The king comes up, rook a5. I'm just going to turn the engine off for a second, makes it more interesting. Rook a5 with the idea of giving the check, and then some knight e6 ideas. So we get this, e4. Obviously, I've got two passed pawns here. I need to push them at some point. He's obviously going to push his pawns, which he does. Knight e6 check, king up, c4. So my guys are coming. Part of the problem I have is I'd quite like to just have the race. So like, say for example, something like this. But as soon as I get here, he can take and then come back. So like that knight is kind of currently stopping it. So I'd actually, in order to have the race, have to like probably have to say we get this. I'd have to come here, then go c6, c7. Something like this, for example, which is apparently winning. So this could have been an interesting way to play, and it might have actually been a winning chance. But I actually played this move knight c5 instead of pushing c5. So we get knight c5, e4, chops, chops, rook g6 check, king f6, rook f6 check. Yeah, and here I needed to calculate this move. And what I noticed is that I do win, like this pawn's going to be fast, but I do win this pawn in some lines. So say, for example, I go like, I can kind of stop the pawn this way. And this would be, oh, it's still a draw somehow, but like, anyway, there were some lines where I was like, this, can't remember what I was calculating, but there were some long lines where it wasn't really working. So you get rook f8, h4, check, check, king g4, check, king h3, king up, bishop back, rook c8 is kind of unnecessary, but hey ho. Take the pawn, king h3, king g4, c5, and we make the draw. The game could have finished, for example, something like this would have eventually. Was this now winning? No, this is still a draw. I don't know, something like this. It would have been a draw ultimately. So I was quite happy to make this first draw against Ian. As I said, like a lot of points higher than me, so a good result on the whole. Second game was against Daniel Gallagher, and I was playing black here, so I'll sort of flip the board around to be from my perspective. And what I knew about this Dan Gallagher is that he'd recently become an FM, and he's quite a young FM, so he's like 24 years old, and therefore I knew he was going to be a tough opponent. So unlike Ian, who has 275 points here, he's nearly 300, so he's 299 FIDE points higher than me. So I'm definitely a big statistical underdog here. And the other thing I knew about him is that he's got a reputation of being very well prepared. So I was debating whether to play my usual Sicilian defense or like something I never played before. Again, I won't reveal what I was planning, because I might use it in a future match. But yeah, so like after deliberation at the board, I spent a few minutes on move one. I decided with just c5, and I'll just do what I know. Unfortunately, this did walk into some pretty deep prep from my opponent. So we get this position and we get this move b4, which is a kind of wing gambit idea in a variation of the Rossolimo. And what's quite interesting about this move is that Caruana did play it against Carlsen in their World Championship match of 2018. And apparently there's an interesting story about this variation, which is when Team Carlson were preparing for the match, they were looking at White's various options against the Rossalimo. And they sort of understood that, um, this was a possible option, but the sort of head of the team, I guess, Peter Heine Nielsen, said, "Oh, why you guys keep looking at B4? It's never going to come up." But then in practice, uh, Caruana did play it. And what is the idea of this move? That's a good question. I think one of them is if you play what is probably the most natural move, that is pawn takes, A3, you can shut it back down with B3 and then play something like this. Actually, it looks relatively solid. I don't know why I didn't just go for this, to be honest. Okay, and you'd get a normalish game. So that's one option, is to try to give the pawn back with b3. But if you do take again, I think this is really dangerous because you've obviously put the bishop on this file. You've given White this whole diagonal. Or you just ignore. So like, yeah, quite often with gambits, you just want to kind of give the pawn back. Okay. But I had prepared an idea myself, which is to take with a knight, which is probably the main line. So in the game, we get bishop b2, applying pressure to the pawn. And I play this move a6, which is quite clever because basically it's saying that should White retreat the bishop, so say, for example, to c4, you just come back with knight c6 and you're fully defending the pawn. And basically, White doesn't have enough compensation. If you get some position like this, you're basically a pawn up. So instead, White plays a3. You get takes, 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 takes. And if you now take, you'd get some position like this, which is really weird because you've got an equal number of pawns. No, you're a pawn up, sorry, but you've got Irish pawns on the B rank, so these triple pawns aren't particularly good. So there's a lot of interesting options here actually. But I played D6, which is I think also what Magnus played, and it was my prep. Knight E7 takes, D4 takes. So I'm still in my prep until this move, Knight C3, which is the one that took me by surprise. So you can see I've used about 30 minutes. He's actually up. So he started with 130. He's up to like 135. He's just been playing like every move instantly and getting the increment. So I take, he takes, and I play Queen C5, which is my first blunder. So the actual correct move is to play B4. And he told me he had this fiendish plan. It's just some crazy variation like this. And black is for the moment a pawn up, but all these squares around the black king look super airy. And if you like check it on the game review, there's one game from this position, which is only a correspondence game. So that's how deep my opponent had prepared. He'd looked at this line that had only been played in a correspondence game. So yeah, kudos to him for some pretty good prep. So we get knight b takes d5, bishop e6. So I'm just a pawn down, but I figure like, okay, I've got a fairly active knight and bishop. He's got slightly awkward knights defending each other. And I thought, okay, I'm a pawn down, but maybe I've got good chances to hold this. So queen d6, rook c8. I'm going to go through these moves somewhat quickly because there's like 100 of them. So, I kind of want to yeah, just get through it. So bishop c4 attacking this knight. Queen takes, rook takes, knight back to d4. Rook out to a5, which is apparently a bit of a mistake. I should just play knight c6. And then I need to have a degree of confidence that this endgame is a draw. I suppose on the basis that the bishop's slightly better than the knight and this c2 pawn is a little weak. So like a possible variation goes something like this. Yeah, not clear that it's a draw, but decent ultimate drawing chances. So anyway, I didn't play that. I sort of kept more pieces on the board, and my idea was to put this rook on this file, attacking this pawn. Apparently knight a4 is a good move. So if I go knight c6, wow, it's just like that. Okay. The knight a4 is somewhat deep. I think Daniel played a much more natural knight c2. And now, yeah, things just start coming off the board. So rook here, rook b1. I'm already down to like 14 minutes. How much time does he have at this point? 19. Okay. So rook here, we get some various exchanges, and we get into this knight endgame. Now, I think I noticed on Matthew Sadler's stream, I think he briefly went like past this game around, around this time, and he said something like, "Oh, should be winning for white because night endings are a bit like king and pawn endings. So if the implication of that being if you have a one pawn advantage, you're usually winning." Whereas rook endings are much more similar, are much more drawish tendencies, right? So like, despite a side being a pawn up, the rooks are a bit more resilient. And I feel like as someone who probably hasn't done enough, I suppose, formal chess education in my life, like say like having a coach as a young player, or like studying a lot of books or stuff of this nature, these are the kind of rules that I don't really know. So like I sort of had a sense that like this position with the rooks would be a lot more drawn, but I didn't know it to the extent that these are meant to be like king and pawn endings. So I'm in kind of dire straits here. And by the way, I should mention I'm playing board one for my team in this game as well. So yeah, f4. I'll go through these moves somewhat quickly. I make a very committal decision, f5 here, to allow him to have a passed pawn. But my idea being I can like play g5 and I'm going to be able to swap some pawns off. I also get this very active king on d5. If we were playing king of the hill, I would have won the game. So we get some pawns chopped off. We get this very weird pattern with the knights where like I'm defending this, I've always got ideas that come here, etc., etc. So yeah, I get my king to this really active square, but apparently I'm completely lost. And now I was just getting ready to resign, I'm like 2 pawns down, da-da-da. But I keep playing some moves. I'm gonna turn the engine off. So like, according to the engine, it's +6 the whole way, right? So, but you can see we're both playing on increment, like we're past the last time control. So we've got 2 minutes 50, he's got 4:15. So this is like 30 seconds additional per move. So the kings just rotate around, da-da-da. And then suddenly, after this knight d5 move, I think knight e6, and I'm technically... Okay, so knight f3 is close to a draw already. Wow. How is that the case? And somehow, if I can achieve this structure, it's a draw. which is absolutely remarkable. And I think the point is you cannot defend both the f pawn and the h pawn in many lines. So either his king needs to babysit this pawn or the knight needs to babysit this pawn. And I think at some point we did actually achieve this, but I messed it up again, but got there again. So I got to this drawn position. And somehow this is technically a draw, which is absolutely insane. I mean, he had a win at this point, which is just to bring the king in. And like these three pawns are just going to queen. But after king g3, it's a draw, which is absolutely insane. And by the way, we were like one of the last games in the playing hall by now. I think there was one other game going on in the 4NCL. It's just like Anna Maya Kazarian, the streamer, was trying to win a rook versus knight against some talented young player. And this game, so we get check. I completely blunder here, which is awful. Knight c2. He can just play e6 and I have to resign. He lets me get the knight back. I'm just going round and round. He eventually gives me this pawn, and I'm like, hang on a minute. Is this winning? Apparently knight c2 throws it away again, somehow. Because his king's gonna get in, and he's now winning again. My goodness, what a game. So the king comes back, my king comes up, and now it's a draw again. I mean, I just don't even understand, to be honest, why the evaluation's flitting between a draw and a win, because only the computer knows. And it's like, I actually quite admire these like Hikaru Gotham chess people, like how they make interesting recaps, because when you analyze these games, I mean, you could spend 2 hours looking at this ending alone, but obviously that's not what people want to see. But we get king g4, king g6, knight b4, king f7, knight f7, knight d5, king up, Eventually he sacks here. I've got 1 minute 16 on the clock. I play this move with 5 seconds on the clock. Because you see I've now got 35, I've got the plus 30, so it's 5 seconds. And I calculate the king can come back. I offer a draw at this point. He was quite disappointed. He accepted the draw, but still a good sport about it and everything. And this was quite a miracle hold against someone 299 points higher than me, being -7 at various points in the game. And that is the very long story about how I held 2 Fide Masters to a draw. I think my rating is now at like 2020. So the March 2100 continues. Thank you very much for watching if you made it this far.